All right, guitars. Here we go. Once again, to reiterate, Mike plays his guitar properly. That's why it sounds good. Makes my job very easy. For this, we use the Aristides. I forget what kind of pickups. It might have long Grin pickups in it, and they sound really, really good. That guitar sounds amazing. Really good bite. I did add a little bit extra as like a boost pedal in the front. And I'll play it before. See how it's a little bit more spongy?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that just added just the right amount of all that good stuff. That's the Gent Boy frequency right there. But that was, had to be dialed to the right amount. So it's exactly the same on both sides. And you know what? We went with the classic. I don't regret it. We were experimenting with real amps. We really wanted them to work. We were doing some real amp stuff, going into a load box and using cab IRs and stuff like that. At the end of the day, this sounded better. And I think the reason it sounded better is because Mike actually played through this plugin. And I feel like there's like a thing that happens when a guitarist plays through an amp and then you switch the amp. It does something to the performance that I can't put my finger on. I've never been a huge fan of like reamping. I really usually tend to go with whatever the guitarist played into a lot of the time, if I can. Obviously, that doesn't get to happen all the time if I'm sent something, but I don't know. There's something about when you're getting the feedback of the way an amp is responding and you're playing.
Totally different.
It's totally different. Yeah. To me, it's really hard to replicate that player amp relationship. So in this case, into the mix, it worked. It spoke to us. It worked. It sounded great. And yeah, it ended up making the final. It's the default cab. There's like nothing crazy going on. Very simple settings, little overdrive in the front. Not even doing a massive amount. No EQ. I didn't change the cabinet. Yep. That's it. And then on the bus, just a little cleanup. I did feel like we were lacking some nice low mids, which we all love to neglect. Once again, I just kind of tried to paint the curve with all the frequency points. This is one thing, very, very, very subtle. Just to catch when he does the palm mute, it's the classic move to catch the palm mutes. This is going to react when there's too much bass in there and kind of duck it down a little bit. So when he hits that low palm muted note, you'll see it move. Especially right there. And then, this was something we added to mix because Mike was like, I love the guitar sound, but we need more presence. I agreed. So I slapped this boy on, added just a little bit of 1.7 and a little bit of 8, and it made a huge difference. Like a huge difference. I'll play it in context too. It's giving us a volume boost. It's giving some mids that like I was afraid to add on here. I didn't want to face the reality on here. I was in denial. I took them out, so I had to add them back without looking at it. And then a little Renaissance axe. It's always nice just to contain it a tiny, tiny bit. Great plugin just to smooth out the final little slot in the chain. move to the chorus.
Did Mike use the guitar with the Evertune bridge?
We were back and forth between two different guitars on this record. For some parts, we used Balaguer guitar that he had with an Evertune, but then we also used our Aristides, I don't know how to say it, without an Evertune, because we actually liked the way that one sounded better. But it was having a little more trouble staying in tune than the Evertune was, obviously. So a lot of the tracks in the record are actually a combination of both guitars. And I actually even came up with like an Audio Suite EQ that I was printing onto the Balaguer when we'd use it, that would kind of simulate the way that the DI sounded on the Aristides. So that was kind of our way of getting around it. So the answer is both. We use both. Now he has the same guitar with Evertune. So when we do the next stuff, he's going to track with that. Thankfully, that'll be great. The Balaguer is awesome too. Really cool guitar.
How do you choose the right compressor for bass and guitar? And do you feel that the guitar compressor brought out the pick attack?
To me, the Renaissance Axe is like probably the only guitar compressor I've liked to use, if I use any. I don't always compress guitars. I think that the Renaissance Axe works best for me because it brings like an evenness to the rhythm guitars. To me, it's not really about bringing out the pick attack. However, it can, if you're in like a breakdown section where there's a lot of space and the guitar re-enters, you do hear that kind of hit when it comes back in. So yeah, in that case it can. But for me, when I'm doing more heavy rock choruses, to me, it's more about just evening out the guitars so they're more of a constant, consistent signal. All right, so let's look at the chorus. I'll play the guitar groups here. So we got a lot of layers here, and they're each serving their own little individual purpose.
Those guitars sound great.
Yeah, the parts, just, they work together really well. For these, Mike played just power chords. And a couple add 9 chords there. And then under them, we have these suspended sus2 chords just going all the way across all the strings. And what's great about like sus chords and adding in major seconds to your chords and stuff like that, nines, is they make a vibration. They vibrate. So it gives a lot of depth, especially when you lay them on top of more basic chords. They just make this really awesome, like resonant, vibrating chord. And it's really an awesome sound. And so that wasn't enough. So then we also added these single note ones with a ton of gain. And we get to go low here. And that just helped to lock it in. I mean, if you look at the DI, so this I think I just recorded with the input on 10, just all the way up. And I believe we punched every note in separately because there's so much gain. Any movement at all was going to be as loud as the note. So we just let it ring, stopped it. Okay, next note, ready, record. Okay, next note. Okay, next note. Because this is really just like acting like a synth. It's barely even a guitar. It's just a layer to make it bigger than life. We can hear what they all sound together one more time. And I really like how that low one brings out that like emotion in the last chord. It like takes you to that place. It's not just staying where it is. It like takes you lower. It kind of vibrates. It's dope. So these, I took out all the pick attack from too. Because I didn't want it. It's like, this is where I was boosting on the other guitars. Because kind of similar to like the drum samples and stuff and making things that are complementary to make one sound out of multiple sounds, like they have to all serve each other. That means that by themselves, they're not necessarily going to sound great, right? I've been using the analogy of like mixing in solo and stuff like that, and finding big sounds and putting them together like cooking. Like imagine if whenever you cooked, you tasted every ingredient and like you took like a big huge teaspoon of salt and you like put it in your mouth like bleh, bleh. That's gross. I'm not putting that in. Like, well, you need to. It's going to be bland if you don't put salt in. Just because it doesn't taste good by itself doesn't mean it's not going to make the dish better. Mm-hmm. So I've been thinking about that. Like, I've talked about it so much. I've spent so much time obsessing over sounds by themselves. And it just makes no sense to do that. It's like everything has to be complementary to each other, which means some sounds might suck on their own, but sound awesome paired up, right?
Yep.
So treatment-wise and the unders, it's exactly the same. I think I just did all the work by cranking the DI. So let's hear all those in the chorus. So yeah, it works great. And then obviously, so when all these other guitars come in, I believe this is going to also help us here. So now that we're stacking all these guitars together, to answer the question about the axe again, or any compressor, it's like, now that we have 3 layers of guitars, it's kind of keeping them all still at one guitar's level, right? So if I mute out the under layers, it's kind of just chilling there. We can see, we can look at our peak. So when I bring these in, it's pushing them down. And our peak is like staying the same. They're just kind of creating that one guitar's level of audio with 3 guitars. And because that happened, when the riff came back in, I had to boost it because the ear was now missing a little bit of that. And that's the other thing, right? It's like, however I had my settings for this riff doesn't necessarily need to be the same for when it comes back. Because once it comes back, you got to listen in the timeline of the song, right? So now your ear's accustomed to these guitars and all the production and all this. So you need more guitars for when that riff comes back this time, because it's going to feel different in context of the track. And even later in the song, I have some really big boosts. In the breakdown, I juiced the guitars up quite a bit. And we also added the favorite. So here I just took Mike's beautiful guitars. I just copied them down. That was it. Just do this. And then I pitch shift it. And I probably did something like this. That's it. Something like that. I don't know if that's exactly what I did. Let me just show why the clipping is cool for certain things. Like, here's just this guitar dragged down, octave shifted down. All right, it's cool. But I'm getting not getting a lot of growl. I want this to be complementary to this guitar. So it sounds cool. They're basically just playing the same thing. So I want this one to enhance what this guitar doesn't have. This guitar doesn't have a lot of sustain between notes. Everything is very pointy. So we'll crank. Wasn't that rumble between notes? And I'll dial that till where I like it. Now you hear it buzzing between each hit, and it extends the decay of each note. It just gives it that heavy, super just evil sounding feeling. Yeah, I might have clipped this on the preamp. I'm not sure if I did it with clip gain or not, but that's usually how I'll do it. The final thing is just this. We have this little riff that comes in the last chorus, which got I had to boost that quite a bit. dB.5 goes a really long way with guitars. And once again, when the next riff came in after, I had to kind of keep the level up because our ears were used to it. So even though the outro riff's the same riff and everything's the same, it needed to be louder so it felt related to the part before it. So those are our rhythm guitars.